In terms of health, when you do train, exercise, two things improve. One, in terms of your immunity. The second thing is it keeps me mentally in a good space. At 30, typically, it's not as easy as when it is at 25, but it didn't feel that way to me. There were younger women who went through a lot more difficulty in terms of the weight bearing that they had to do. My hips could take a lot more. I think if you're talking in terms of all that, yes, between 20s to 30s, where there's a transition in the, if you're married and you've decided to have children. If I don't have it today, it's okay. But during my playing days, I know it helped. Otherwise, your protein content is not going to come in. South Indian vegetarian food, there is not much protein coming in. So I did have to take, because those days there was not any supplements. There was no whey protein and all that.
Coach Aarti, welcome back. In this episode, I want to cover the health aspects, not just of being a sports person, but as a woman. You started your career at the age of 18. And, so you've been through as a sports person, from before itself, you were a sports person. I want to understand what is it that you observe in terms of the physical demands of a girl from adolescent age to maybe your 30s and your 40s, and if you know older women as well, because the fact is that 95% of women actually don't do any exercise, and that's a very dangerous thing. You are one of the very few people who actually do it. What do you observe in terms of health?
In terms of health, I think when you do train, exercise, two things improve. One, in terms of your immunity, I think my levels of immunity are very high. Touch wood, I seldom fall sick. And even if I do, I'm able to bounce back. And the second thing is the other health that is very both spoken, misspoken, and underspoken, mental health. So I feel being in this field where I'm physically very challenged, or there's a lot of physical work that goes behind, not just in terms of training for myself to keep myself fit, but my job itself is not a sedentary one. It keeps me mentally in a good space, and it allows me to also be able to open up about it in different ways, or to cope with it in more positive ways. In terms of the physical health, I think especially now at 40s, when you're closer to your menopause or your perimenopause stage, I think the body deals with it better. You don't have the typical exhaustion that perimenopause could bring in as one of the symptoms, or even when you have a lot of other perimenopause problems that you have. I think the difference between having played, I wouldn't say played, having had some kind of intense physical activity at some stage in your life definitely eases it. It's different for different people. For me, I feel it has definitely been kinder. I don't know, like I said, I could have just simply gotten lucky with it. Similarly, with childbirth, having been a mother, I could go through my pregnancy with way more ease. Weight bearing and the aches and pains that come with it, all of it felt a little easier. Whereas people who were my friends, who we've had children at pretty much similar ages, I had my child when I was 30. So at 30, typically, it's not as easy as when it is at 25, but it didn't feel that way to me. But there were younger women who went through a lot more difficulty in terms of the weight bearing that they had to do. My hips could take a lot more. I think if you're talking in terms of all that, yes, between 20s to 30s, where there's a transition in the, if you're married and you've decided to have children, I think you're able to take on that. The load of motherhood subsequently, I was able to take on, be it handle my child, the house, everything, or even other women who I see are able to juggle well between different areas if they've played. It's not as demanding. Like I said, mentally also it's kept me definitely in a good place.
Coach, in terms of nutrition, how do you mentor your younger students, say from the age of, you said have students from the age of 7. What is a typical kind of food do you advise the families to give their children?
Uh, by the age of 12, I advise also ask them to go to a nutritionist to get, if I feel that they could be, lacking in something, which certain tests will bring out, especially if they, after they've, gone through their first period cycle or menses, if there's anything just physically that
So
is.
after the first period cycle itself, girls can have deficiencies at such a young age. Children can.
Maybe at least they, because their body is going through a change, hormonal changes are happening. I think it's best we also seek a professional's help, especially if they are high intensity sports people. If they're high performance athletes, I think it's best to meet a nutritionist because the body will now start demanding more. But in terms of younger kids, I cannot say don't eat junk at all. I'm going to be very honest. You have to allow them to have it if you don't want them to do it behind our backs. But I encourage them to eat home food as much as possible. I believe that food cooked at home definitely is better than eating out. And from being South Indian, I tell them to eat what has been traditionally eaten. Rice is not that a bad option at all.
Not at all. It's a myth that rice
For
causes
South
problems.
Indians, rice works, is what I've always felt. And the typical sambar and the vegetables, because there's the vegetables that South Indian food has doesn't have too much oil. It's always parboiled or boiled, and then there's a little bit of tempering that happens. It's not soaking in oil unless it is. Yes, maybe your chicken gravy and all needs that, but I still prefer it if it is homemade.
You said you are a non-vegetarian by choice.
Yes.
Do you think, as a sports person, in terms to meet your protein
That's
requirement,
why
it was
I took it.
essential?
That's why I started, and I have no. If I don't have it today, it's okay. But during my playing days, I know it helped me. Otherwise, your protein content is not going to come in. With South Indian vegetarian food, there is not much protein coming in. So I did have to take, because those days there was not any supplements. There was no whey protein and all that. So the eggs and the chicken gave me the protein that I needed, and the fish once in a way. But now that I'm not an active sports person, I'm able to manage with vegetarian.
Is whey protein healthy? I mean, doesn't it impact your
I
kidney?
don't. Mixed opinions are there. There is
Do you take any
no.
protein
I
supplements?
personally don't. I don't take any supplements today.
Okay. And during your playing days, you used to?
No. And like I said, those days there was not much awareness with regard to your protein shake and whey protein. So it all came with whatever you ate, your fruits. I'm not a big fruit juice person. I'm a fruit eater. And then subsequently, I realized it's better to eat the fruit and not the juice part.
Yeah, which
So
is
I
fiber.
think without knowing, I've done a few things right.
And your students, do you recommend proteins
I
for them?
suggest they meet the nutritionist because two things: it's expensive. If they can get it in a better form by eating it, I would recommend that. Like I said, I'm not the expert. There are some very good products that have come. Um, so there are banned products as well. So I tell the students, especially with regard to whey protein, there is not much information on what is banned and what isn't. And what goes into that whey protein, I think there's a lot of analysis still happening. You can check it on certain websites, but you're better off going through a sports nutritionist for that and ensuring it is WADA approved.
Okay. So, see, for anybody who's you yourself must be having your own fitness regimen, right? Anybody who's trying to keep their energy levels up for the whole day, what would you typically recommend? Like, go for workout with a shot of black coffee, or have two almonds. Like, there's so many things that happen, right? What has worked the best for you as
Oh.
a sports person?
It could. I'm going to be very honest over here. I'm not going to lie. I need my cup of coffee in the morning. I don't. My day cannot start, and I'm talking typical South Indian filter coffee with milk. I have that. I have it with a couple of biscuits, and that's after that my day starts. And then I have my breakfast. So this is how I've done it all my life, and it's worked for me. But nowadays, because it's getting to be a little more intense, if sports people are getting it, then you are expected to have something slightly more solid. Could be a fruit, It could be, like you said, some dry fruit or a dry fruit milkshake that can be simply made at home, nothing very fancy. Soak badam, cashews, pistas, and then with some chia seeds, grind it, add some milk, and maybe half a banana. Drink that up, and you are good to go for 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Coach, when you come back to the topic of mental health, do you feel that having easy access to mobile phones, TV, and digital media has made the younger generation far more susceptible to staying down after a dull moment? Or do you think it was easier for you or your generation kids to bounce back up?
I guess, in a way, we all had the opportunity to interact with others and to share how we felt. If I was feeling pissed off, I'd go and talk to someone. You know what? I messed it up really bad today. It was never within me. It was out, always out with somebody I really trusted, and I could say that and be confident that they wouldn't judge me for it. But maybe today, it's not about the mobile phones. I think kids feel a little apprehensive about sharing it, because they feel they may be thought of as incapable, weak. Actually, it's not, none of that. None of it at all. Sometimes it's when you don't do well that you need to actually hold on to the people more than devices. But I guess society is changing. But thankfully, having said that, the same mobile phone, the same technology can be of help, because there are enough and more um people available over there who can also solve your problems. You can reach out to a completely anonymous person, because if as a known person, if you feel I judge you, you could talk to an anonymous person and be done with it. There are those platforms also. You just have to be wary, or even if you want to approach a professional, there is enough information online to seek help. Again, not too many people need to know about it. There is privacy and there is uh, lack of it as well. So it depends on how you want to use this technology there. But for me, people work.
If there are three things that always work for somebody who's really down and they need to bounce back up, it can be a sports person, it can be a working professional, it can be anybody, it can be a homemaker, like you said. What would those three things be, according to you?
Uh, I think first would be reflect a little whether whatever you are worrying about or that's putting you down is entirely because of you. Is it uncontrollable or uncontrollable? If it is in the controllable, then make it actionable. Once you've made it actionable by either seeking help or going about it, follow up. If it is an uncontrollable, I think that's where the problem should end. All right? I think first thing is to take step back, take a moment. This, can I control this, or is it something out of my control? When I say out of my control, say somebody else has said something about it. It's their opinion. It could be in the field of sport. It could be anything, and typically that affects us a lot. Somebody. Now, if I think back and say, now X said this to me, what did I do? If I think about it, and yeah, I said something rude. Then now I'm cognizant that I have played a role in it. Then the actionable is, can I apologize? Okay, if I'm going to now, I said that's an action you can take. Now follow up on it. Go speak and be done with it. But if it is something that I'm oversimplifying, I know that somebody has said, say the same ex has said something, and you thought about it and said it's coming from a point of view where it could be in a corporate environment or some other, where because of their mood, they've come and said something rude to you, and you are pretty sure that were not the cause of it. But if I let that linger within me, and say, he was messed up. Why did he have to shout at me? Now I'm saying, I, I, I should have said this. I should have done that, but I did nothing. You are putting yourself in a position where an uncontrollable is starting to take control of you. So I think first thing is whenever you're down, if you can reflect a little bit, if you are in a position where you can self-reflect a little bit, understand whether it was the problem is in your hands or out of, not because of you, controllable and uncontrollable, then the sequence starts. But it's in the uncontrollable the problems start.
Yeah. So true.
Correct? Now, that is where you have to realize how much am I loading for myself, or is it time for an intervention? If there is a need for intervention, I think today we should not feel ashamed to seek help. You could start off with the person closest to you. It could be your parents, it could be your best friend, it could be your coach, it could be your teacher, it could be your mentor, it could be somebody who was there with you at that point when you felt that low. Reach out, even if it's the uncontrolled. Maybe hearing it from somebody else's point of view could help. Saying, you know what, this is not your fault. But then it gets deeper. I think without any shame, there is no shame in asking for help.
That is something everybody needs to know.
I think everybody needs to hear it as well. There is no shame in saying, I don't feel good within. It's not physical. If I have a physical ailment, I go to a doctor. That's not embarrassing, right? Why is it embarrassing when your everyday living is a problem because you cannot think straight? Why can't I seek help? Why is it wrong? Why is it that considered being weak? It's not. It is even more important because that's silent suffering. And I don't think anybody needs to suffer.
I mean, the world is here to give. If you're not able to take it because you're stuck in your head, all you need to do is just reach out and ask for help.
You never know when the help will come, from where it will come.
Yeah. This was so nice, and it's so important because I have a teenager at home and I know he comes home and, even with adolescent, the mood swings happen. And I'm glad that he has a habit of talking, but I see so many other kids of his age who don't talk, and I know there's something going on in their head.
So I think you should give yourself a pat on the back for giving him the time. Sit down, listen to him. Even if it's just gibberish, I think we should be listening.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you so much. I mean, I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too.
Oh, absolutely.